Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Several people sent me the story, including Eric, and the story version I have is from Sports Illustrated, although it was widely reported elsewhere. But LeBron James is a basketball player who is capable of dunking a basketball. And I have to tell you, I'm 6'2". On my best day back in high school, I could touch the rim. That was it. I could see the rim. I could just barely touch it. Couldn't dunk a basketball to save my life at any point in my life, so I respect anyone who can. But recently, LeBron James has been sued for posting a photograph of himself dunking a basketball. And the problem, of course, is that he didn't take the photograph. Someone else did. It's kind of hard to take a photograph of yourself while dunking a basketball. That would take some skill, my friends, that even LeBron James does not have. So the headline from Sports Illustrated is analyzing the copyright lawsuit against LeBron James. I've seen headlines that say things to the effect of LeBron James sued for posting photo of himself. And that's leaving out the element that he didn't take the picture. The photographer took the picture, and the photographer owns the copyright to the photograph that he took. So it happened in a game, Los Angeles versus Miami, back in December, where LeBron James dunked the ball. And apparently it was a magnificent dunk. And in the photograph, as you see it, it appears that he's just levitating. He's just there. That's an amazing photograph. So the Lakers won the game 113-110. It was their 13th straight road win. And James had a triple-double. I'm sorry, he missed a triple-double by just one rebound. But he had 28 points, 12 assists. But the thunderous dunk happened a few months ago. And it's kind of, fallen by the wayside as far as news goes. But here's the problem. LeBron James saw a picture of that dunk, and he then reposted it on his social media accounts. And I saw one place where the photograph, which was taken by a guy named Steve Mitchell, by the way, who's a seasoned photojournalist. Steve Mitchell's photo was cropped and then posted on the social media without attribution. It didn't say, by the way, courtesy of, and they never asked his permission either, which is part of the problem. So the Facebook post is still up. It's got 1,400 likes, has generated 61 comments, but I can tell you that on the Twitter account I saw, it had over 2 million likes. So LeBron James is now being sued for copyright infringement in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York. On March 17th, a New York copyright attorney filed a federal complaint on behalf of Mitchell, and James is named as a defendant, and so too are a pair of companies connected to James, both of which, according to the lawsuit, operate LeBron James's social media. No one actually expects that LeBron James is sitting there running his own social media. The defendants are accused of infringing Mitchell's copyright by reproducing and publicly displaying the photograph without the photographer's consent. And he's asking for a jury trial in the case if it goes that far. And he's seeking damages or $150,000 per infringement, which I guess is one of the things that you're allowed to ask for under copyright law. Now, this man who's writing this article, it's Michael McCann for Sports Illustrated, is an attorney. And he points out that the fact that James is featured prominently in Mitchell's photo did not give James the right to publish it. Mitchell owns his photos. And this goes to the essence of copyright law. Absent a contractual relationship that instructs otherwise, Mitchell possesses copyrights in his creative works, including his photos. As a result, Mitchell has the right to control the reproduction of his photos so that, such as their publication on social media websites, he can decide whether to license his photos, and if so, demand financial compensation for granting a license. Furthermore, as a credentialed photojournalist and consistent with NBA media policies, Mitchell has permission to take photos during NBA games so long as the photos are for news coverage of those games. And so people who interfere with Mitchell's copyrights are potentially liable for infringement. And Mitchell had even gone so far as to register this photo with the U.S. Copyright Office, which a lot of photographers don't do. They just simply take a picture and post it someplace. You do not need to register it, but if you do register it, it gives you some more protections, and I'm not going to get heavily into that. But, he says, even though James is clearly the focus of Mitchell's photo, that fact has no bearing on the photo's ownership. It is Mitchell's photo. That's not to say James lacks rights in how a photo of him is used, James enjoys a right of publicity that encompasses his image in photos. And the scope of the right of publicity varies by state, and the First Amendment sometimes limits its application. The right generally protects one's name, image, likeness, and associated identity traits from unauthorized commercial use. So James can actually sue violators for misappropriating his right of publicity. And so the photographer at the sidelines with press credentials who snaps a photograph of the game with the NBA's permission for news purposes can then take that photograph, file the copyright, and then publish it places and say, yes, this is a photograph of the game in action, and this is a photograph of LeBron James, one of the participants in the game, doing something. Now, if someone were to take that photograph and make posters of it or sell T-shirts of it or something of that nature, then not only would the photographer have a complaint, but LeBron James would have a complaint, saying, hey, look, you're using my likeness for the wrong purpose. Okay, but here, Mitchell is saying, look, LeBron James is using it for the wrong purpose. So this is all probably going to get hashed out somewhere down the road. But the attorney who wrote this article, Michael McCann, points out that they're probably going to try to say fair use. And fair use is the one you always hear when people take stuff and post it on YouTube and say, well, it's fair use. I'm just using it fairly. No one understands what that means. This defense would assert that while Mitchell may be the rightful owner of the original photo, James's publication of a cropped version was permissible. Fair use can be established when the use of a copyright work is intended for news reporting, teaching, criticism, comment, or one of other several limited purposes. And then there's factors to be taken into account under fair use. One is the purpose and character of the use, the nature of the work, the amount and substantiality of the portion used, and the effect of that use upon the potential market for or value of the copyrighted work. And that's the big one right there, because if you take the bulk of the photograph and simply reprint it, where anybody who wants to can right-click on it, download it, this man's going to have a hard time selling that photo in the future. James's attorneys could argue the purpose of the Facebook post was to celebrate his dunk with fans and to let them know the news of the dunk happening. The post, James's attorneys could contend, wasn't intended to earn income for James, but, James's attorneys might insist that Mitchell's photo was not especially imaginative or unique. Well, something. As a photographer, I can tell you it was a darn good photograph. It was a very good photograph. And whether it was unique or not, if it's not unique, why'd you use that one? Why'd you grab another one? So, in terms of the impact of James's post on Mitchell's market for the photo, James's attorneys might maintain that Mitchell could still license the original work. Unless Mitchell could prove that he lost potential licensing money, James's attorneys could insist there's no reason to believe that James posting a cropped version impacted the market. It's getting harder and harder to sell stuff these days, especially on the internet. But of course, Attorney McCann points out the attorneys for Mitchell would be armed with rebuttals to a fair use defense. For starters, James didn't earn payments or royalties through his public Facebook post. The post helps to expand his brand. James clearly uses his brand for commercial purposes. His Facebook page has been liked 23 million times and has 24 million followers. Through the page, he promotes endorsed products, including his Nike apparel, and so on and so forth. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But, I'm always a little leery of posting too much stuff on the internet. If I take a photograph that I particularly like, and I've seen my photographs taken by other people. And in one of the most comic examples, I got the opportunity to drive the car that this model's based on. Okay, that's Bobby Isaac's K&K Daytona. I got an opportunity to drive that car. And the day I drove it, I had a big camera with me. I had one of my Nikons with me. And on one particular moment of that day, we parked the car in the parking lot of the Talladega Raceway. And in the background was the grandstands, and I believe it was a Sunoco gasoline sign that was in the background, which is one of the great emblems from the early days of NASCAR. And I took a bunch of photographs of the car in that parking lot. And I recognized the photograph because there was one photograph I took, and I had just recently gotten Photoshop and was playing with it. And I decided to remove the trees that were behind it on one side. I was just playing. And then later on, somebody asked me about the car, and they asked me a technical question. And I think they asked me something about the front air dam, but I forgot what it was. But something that, so I said, oh, okay, I have a photograph of that. I took the photograph and I decided I'll put up the one that's been altered, because that way I can always prove it's mine, right? So I posted that photograph on one of my own pages. And a little while later, I was poking around for something, and I came across a website, and it goes, Bobby Isaac's Daytona, modern day. And there's my photograph. And I looked at it and I go, that's kind of unusual. And I right-clicked on it to see what the attributions were, like just to see if it said. And it actually goes, you are not authorized to download this photograph. It is copyrighted. So the guy who put it on his website without my permission apparently is claiming that no one can download it off his website because he's copyrighted it. And he should know he didn't take the photograph. This is a really simple test. Do you own the copyright in the photograph? I don't know. Did you take it? Were you the one doing this? Okay. If you were doing this, you got a copyright. If you were simply taking it off of a website and putting it on your website, you don't own the copyright. And I've actually had another occasion where, this is a real convoluted one, but I took a photograph in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan of a storm rolling into Copper Harbor. And I shot a video and I put it up about Douglas Houghton, one of Michigan's earliest explorers, and I wrote a book about it, man. And in my video, I talk about when Douglas Houghton's boat got swamped, and I don't have a photograph of a swamped boat. So I put up a photograph of a storm coming, and I put the photograph in my video. And a couple weeks later, I'm poking around, and I found my photograph on someone else's website, and they had apparently decided after seeing, I'm guessing they saw my video, they did a little post about Douglas Houghton, and they stole that screen grab out of my video and put it up and said, yeah, and the storm rolled in, and they used the same photograph for the storm that I used, which was taken in like 2004 with my camera. And I sent the guy a note and I said, hey, I'm curious. I mean, I'm a big Douglas Houghton fan, and I like the way you told the story. Why'd you use my photograph? And I didn't know that was yours. Really? When you were stealing it off my video, you didn't know it was mine? Now, I've never sued anybody for copyright infringement. I doubt I ever will. It's a convoluted process. It's probably not worth the effort in 99.99999% of the cases. But getting back to the original one here, someone on the team of LeBron James, and I'm not talking about the basketball team, but his social media team, saw a really cool photograph that was copyrighted by somebody else and put it up and said, hey, check this out. So we'll see how it plays out in court. I do have to thank Eric for passing it along, and my hat is off to Michael McCann. His article is much, much longer. I just read you a couple excerpts of it, but he explains it very, very well. We'll have to see how this works out. Questions or comments, put them below. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. I cannot accept that course of action.